calculating the slope. We're just doing all we were supposed to do on that last problem, just 4 times. And so the slope is the rise over run. So we could even plot them if we wanted to, but we'll just see that it's the difference in y. Well, no, let's plot them. We probably should have plotted the last one. Oh, but we're going to have trouble plotting because look at what my Apple Pencil is doing. Well, that works. So we'll draw our axis. Try that again. That one worked. So there's our axis. There's our axis. And so we're going to plot the point 2, 3 and the point -1, 2. Let's get rid of that. And so let's notice, well, we can see the slope from here easily. It's up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and over 1, 2, 3. Wow, my pencil is messing up a lot. So that shows us right there the slope is 5 over 3. But notice the other way we can do it. It's this difference in y value. Up here it's at 3. Down here it's at -2. Because those are the y values of the points. So notice how we can get that by just subtracting those. Even though it's one positive and one negative, we still get that difference because then the negatives, that becomes positive. So that's why that difference, it still becomes +5 just when you subtract them. And same with these down here, these x values. This was an x value of -1. Oh my gosh. And this was an x value of 2. And so if we do just the same, we do 2 minus -1, we get +3. And so that shows us the slope is 5 over 3 by just subtracting the y values and subtracting the x values. And we can do that the same on the next one. I guess we can go ahead and plot it since we already have the first point anyway. So we're going to go the point 3, -1. Oh, no, but that's with this. Okay, so now we're talking about that line. And so we can see that very easily there, that the slope is down 1, down 4, and over 1, so -4. But we can also calculate it, because we could do -1 minus 3 over 3 minus 2, which is -4 over 1. So yeah, -4. And then what I wanted to point out here, which is kind of why we graphed it, is that look how the slopes look when they're positive and negative. I think that's a really important thing to just always pay attention to, that this line is going up, left to right, because you always look left to right when you look on graphs. So left to right, it's going up, versus this negative slope, left to right, it was going down. And so it's important to notice just the difference between those two. And then what's our next one? Our next one, 5, 3. So let's switch to a different color, blue. So 5, 3, that's interesting because look at that. Well, it shouldn't have been there. Right here. Or no, one more over. Whoops. 5, 3. So now if we talk about that line between those 2 points, look at that. That's just a sideways line. Wow, look at my Apple Pencil messing up. I think it's because the battery on my iPad is so low. But we'll make do. So we got that and we got that. And so we got that horizontal line. So the horizontal line, well, look at the rise. The rise is 0. So it's 0 divided by the run, which in this case is 3. But that's just going to be 0. And so we can show that with the math too. 3 minus 3 over 5 minus 2. 0 divided by anything is 0. So that slope of a horizontal line is 0. And that makes sense because the y isn't changing. Because what is the slope in the first place? I think the real way to think about slope is that slope is how much y changes. It's the change in y when x changes by 1. That's the real way to think about the slope. Is that it's when x changes by 1. And it's like that because, like here, if the slope is just a number, it's always over 1. So see how that's saying the y goes down by 4 when x goes up by 1. But then even over here when the slope is 5/3, so it's totally fair to say, like you usually say, that when x goes, or is that y goes up by 5 when x goes up by 3. But see, it's also totally fair to say that y goes up by 5/3 when x goes up by 1. Because that's always what the slope is. The slope is how much the y changes. So the y changes by 5/3 when x changes by 1. And so here, when the x changes by 1, the y changes by 0. But then here what happens? The point 2 comma 5 is what we're looking at. So what does that graph look like? If we put the line between those, that's a straight up and down line. And so that, think about that. How much does the y change when the x changes by 1? Well, that doesn't make any sense, right? Because the x never changes by 1. So that's why you say that this slope is undefined, which you also see when you do the math, because you do 5 minus 3 over 2 minus 2. So you get divided by 0, and you can't divide by 0. So that right there is undefined. So look at what we saw there. We calculated a positive slope, and we see what a positive slope looks like. That was here, going up. We calculated a negative slope, and we saw what a negative slope looks like, here going down. And then we calculated a slope of 0, and we saw that that's a horizontal line, and we calculated an undefined slope, and we saw that that's a vertical line. But we just all calculate those with the slope formula, which was, did we write down the slope formula? No. y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. The change in y over change in x.